Hello, you beautiful stars. Welcome back. I'm Cortney, host of Stars of the Morning Light. And I don't believe this lovely lady even needs an introduction again. This is Jewels, though. Say hello, everyone, to Jewels.
Hello, hello again.
Hello, hello. When Jules was here before, I did ask her my question. So you're going to have to go back and watch the first video to even understand what we're talking about here. Um, we talked so much, you and I, about communication. And it kind of was just going. I mean, we didn't really even know what we were going to talk about. And then we were talking about communication. And since then, we both kind of decided that we do need to further that conversation, especially because of the past few weeks since that program aired. How have you been, Jules, by the way, during the past few weeks?
One day at a time. I have been working on trying to get into a routine of posting every day. So that's definitely been a struggle, especially when you're not feeling 100% and struggling with, different aspects of like mental health or like physical health issues. So I've been trying to allow like a little more understanding, to kind of give myself room to kind of operate in of, okay, just because I don't get everything done doesn't mean I can't get some things done. So it's like,
Yeah.
okay, trying to take, smaller steps. And because I think sometimes I personally look at too much all at once and I get overwhelmed and then I just like, I shut down. So it's like, okay, now I'm getting into the habit of taking those smaller steps, which I've gone now. I think today is 34, 35 of the daily posting. And so to me, it's just, okay, those are the little steps, but now
Yeah, yeah,
it's,
yeah.
okay, how can I build on that?
Oh my goodness. I used to be the type of person that my daily list was like 15, 20 things. It was insane. Like every day. This is what I'm gonna get done. And of course I never achieved that. And then I beat myself up. By the end of the night, I'm beating myself up looking at the things I didn't get done, opposed to all that I did get done. And now in my somewhat ripe age, that 20, 15, 20 list. Oh, that's my weekly goals. So, like, I do not try to cram. Oh, I didn't get to it today. Well, shoot, I guess I'll get to it at some point this week. If not, I had to give it up. I had to. It can drive you crazy.
You have lists for your lists.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. My I was always that type of person. Everything's very organized. Bit OCD, let's say that. Everything's organized, everything's got lists, everything is going from this moment to this moment to this moment. And yeah, I will say at least uh 2021 and 2022 has really had to kick my butt with what moment are you talking about? What moment are you in? So, oh my goodness.
Well, that's
Jules,
sometimes
go ahead.
it's good to have like time limits and set like time frames. Okay, like I'm going to allow this much amount of time to like for this activity or this thing. And it's funny because then as I was like thinking, oh, okay, time and lists and stuff, and it's like, we're talking about communication. Sometimes you need to put time limit on communication, like when you're communicating with certain people, because some people will talk like forever, and some people are just difficult to talk with. That
Oh,
can be triggering. So it's like, well, you need, to set boundaries with time limits too.
oh wow. I guess I never even kind of thought about that, which I probably should. Because depending on who you are out there and you know who you are, you get me on the phone and I'm blah, 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 blah. 2 hours could go blah, blah, blah. I should think about that. See, these are all good points. What do we do? Okay, so how would we even set up a boundary like that? Because most of us go, oh, I gotta go to the post office. I'll talk to you later. Some random, I gotta let you go. My kid fell down a well or so, like we come up with some of the weirdest stuff when it's like, I gotta get off the phone with this person.
I think that's why a lot of people switch to text messages, because it feels like you're saving time. I don't know if you're necessarily saving time because you're spending time, with the texting still too. But if you're going to pick up the phone, a lot of times people will be, okay, I have 5 minutes. Like, and so if you put that out there at the beginning, and then they're like, so then they have that in their head. So then they're like, okay, it'd be like, okay, I have 5 minutes or until, and then I have to, move on to this, maybe tell the why. Depends on, who you're talking to, but I think sometimes too, if you have like your list, be like, okay, I have this much time to talk to this person, then I have like a meeting. And sometimes I know some
Yeah.
people will be like, they'll purposely call somebody right before they have something. So then they'll be like, oh, guess what? I gotta go. Because it's hard to
I would do
cut
that.
certain conversations short.
I would admit I would do that. That's a Courtney personality right there. To like know that I have something in, 5 minutes or so, and then call you real quick and be like, oh, I'm sorry, I got something to do. Yeah, that's so my personality. Yeah, I would do that. But I like the whole idea of kind of stating at the beginning of the call, like, hey, I only got about 10, 20 minutes here. We can chat for about that length. Do you think, the texting thing, I don't even know what to say.
Anything typing, whether it's texting, email, social media, written, texting back and forth, people have gotten so lazy. And it really has highlighted how deficient we are with the English language.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And then you have people with that English isn't their first language too. So you're trying to communicate, with people who it might be their second or third language. You don't know. But the best advice, one of my friends who is autistic, because he has a hard time sometimes, with trying to read what somebody is trying to say, kind of like the tone. He's like, emojis, which sounds kind of like maybe juvenile, I guess, maybe to you. But I've found that because I'm not always perceived the way I am intending to come across,
Yeah.
I'll use emojis to help convey like the tone or the mood that I'm in, because sometimes I come off as too dry because I'm so well, and too, with like with writing and stuff, like it's such a, like, how many times do I proofread before I send something? It's ridiculous. Like I still like go through and like check my punctuation and my grammar and
Do you
like
really?
before I send a text, because I'm just that kind of person.
Well, that's lovely because I like to hear that. I I honestly, so okay, you say use emojis. I don't even know what most of these emojis mean. And that's the problem. Like and I'll see it too, like older people like myself or just aren't hip to this stuff. Those that like use the holding the heart emoji that I think is supposed to, now in my education of this stuff, is supposed to represent like you like caring, like, oh,
Right.
when for years I was using it as, oh, I love this, not caring. I will also tell you, this is how bad I am with the emojis. When I started with Instagram like 2 years ago, or even, okay, it was like 2 years, yes, went by with the flame emoji. I literally thought, because I do teach the Emerald Tablets by Toth, that everyone was representing, like, oh, shoot, your inner flame. That's what that must mean. Like, you're saying, yes, my inner flame connects and resonates with that post. I had no clue that it meant, oh, it's just hot. There's some commercial past the television, some teeny bopper saying, oh, that's flame. And then all of a sudden,
Or
I was
that's
like,
fire. Yeah. Like
or
something's like
fire.
really
Yeah. I was
cool.
like, yeah, I was not interpreting that correctly at all, that it meant cool. I thought everybody on the planet must have known of their inner flame, and they were trying to say, my inner flame resonates with that post. No, they just meant it was cool. And I was like, oh, wow.
Well, and it can mean that though, because I think most of them are, you know, even like the official meaning of an emoji. I don't know that people follow that too closely because I think it's in context and it's what other emojis are using with it too. So, because I noticed, especially in the YouTube lives, um, there's people love to use emojis on YouTube. It seems like because
Yeah.
they don't necessarily want to like type in something, but they definitely respond with like a string of emojis. So it's like
Right.
you kind of get like a sense of like, you know, depending upon like the combinations that people are using, kind of like what the vibe that they're
The vibe
trying
is.
to get across.
Yeah, I just recently, like a few weeks ago, realized you could have different colored hearts. It doesn't have to be a red heart every time. So now I'm like, ooh, green and purple. Because I do love everyone, but red is really romantic. And that's how like sad I kind of am. Here's the thing about texting. It is that you can't fully get what somebody is trying to express. Or I still type like this with my little, just my one finger trying to type, right? That's never going to change. And so for me to type up all the words from my mouth onto this, that's a whole lot of time when it would be easier to just call somebody. Thank God about 3 months ago, I learned of that whole record your voice and then just say it. That I'm using much more because it's just too much for me personally. And I'm hoping that all my older generation people are there going, yeah, I really came out as like a 60-year-old woman. So I'm so not advanced in the technology. Um, the problem is the intent, like you were saying, Jules. And I know what you're talking about because sometimes I've been in DMs with you, I've been in text with you going, what? She might be busy. Let that text just go. What did she mean by that? I don't know. But you didn't say anything. It was just so dry. It was so, does she want to do this? Does she not want to do this? I'm not really sure what's going on here. So and we all do that. We all have that problem. You text like my husband. I know exactly, you know, what's going on there. Um, and I think it is the emoji thing. Wow, that's some information for people. That's the only way we're gonna know.
And we talked about the you know, set the vibe, like, and I think communication is also about the frequency, you know, trying to match someone's frequency,
Mm,
which isn't always a good thing. And just this just recently, this last week too, I was thinking about communication because I struggle with communication with a family member. And it's like we're on such different frequency levels that as much as I try to like meet this person where they're at, it's like sometimes no matter what you say or do or how you try to express yourself, um, there's just it's so hard to communicate it if there's two people at two different like opposite frequencies.
yeah. Okay, so I agree with that. And how I honestly, you're gentle with your approach just there. And I will say, usually when I'm stating that, that's how I gently represent, yeah, this person and I, we do not get along. I usually say our energies just don't mix well together. That's Courtney's appropriate, polite way of saying, yeah, they and I are just, we're not going to jive together. But it is that. I think it is. It's really everybody's got their own energy. Everybody does. And
And
yeah,
some
that's
people
the
you just
polite
have to
way.
limit. Yeah, and you just have to limit them because I'm an empath, but that person's a narcissist. So it's like
Mm.
two things that don't really work well together because it's like, you know, people say, are you picking up what I'm laying down? It's like, well, probably not in that case ever.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, you got to limit, there you go, you know, where you limit how much time you spend with that person, because the communication, it's like, you go in circles. It's like, well, how much time do you want to go in circles? And you just have to be like, okay, so I'm getting it this amount of time and then I'm going to move on.
Wow, that's really good advice because yeah, if it's somebody that we've already decided that this is not gonna work out, like there is no getting through to you from at least my energy, my standpoint, that must be we agree to disagree and walk away. It's gotta be. Do you
Or
think
you
that would
find a third person.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. I've even tried to do that at times and it just didn't work. But a third party is there to try to see both sides, and the problem is third parties tend to sway in one direction or not. You see what I'm saying? You got to find that middle person that's going to be like, okay, you both have valid points. Um, do you feel being an empath like you are? Do you feel that communication? Because it's interesting. There's so many empaths that operate differently, and it's good. All empaths should, we all need to. But like, my husband's a huge empath, as everyone here knows. I've talked about it. He doesn't do communication at all. Like he just doesn't. He just doesn't. No, it's just not. Well, outside of our home, and because he sees it as what he's got to handle at work is enough for him. So should we also recognize those empaths that we should maybe be a little sensitive that if we sense like they're trying to get off the phone, maybe it's because it was too much for them? Like with you with the narcissist. I mean, I'm sure you are squirming and trying to send signals in ways of like, I got to get off the phone or I got to get away from this person. I think I'm not a narcissist, but I'm not also one that will understand the feeling of an empath as much as like others, because I'm a different kind of empath. So I think everyone needs to kind of pay attention, like maybe the body language, if that's making any sense.
Yeah, but I think part of it needs to be put back on the empath, because
Okay.
you're always going to be picking up stuff. And, you know, whether you're talking to somebody or not, if you're just around people. So it's like, you have to, you know, establish your boundaries, you know, learn, you know, have the tools to transmute something. Um,
Mm,
you know, setting the tone initially can help too, because, you know, we're so easily influenced by others, but it's like, well, no, you can take back the power and you can influence your space how you want it. Like, you set your space, you set your bubble. Like, you have more power than you realize. People in general, I mean, you know, have more power, I think, over that than they realize, setting the tone. But I think, you know, setting those expectations going into it, and that's where it's like, this person, this person who, you know, the narcissist that I struggle with, you know, I try to put the boundaries of, you know, call or text before you come over, you know. So it's like, I can like prepare and get myself like, okay, so I'm gonna have to deal with, you know, a difficult person, because I have a difficult family, toxic to
yeah.
say the least. So when I know I'm going to be around them, I prepare myself mentally. You know, I prepare to, you know, tools that I like to use, you know, stones. You know, sometimes I'll make jewelry that has specific combination of stones, just so, you know, I can have it, you know, like on me as like, you know, just energy wise, and then just as like a focal point too, to kind of like remind me of like, okay, like,
Okay.
because I choose my reactions. So it's like, sometimes, you know, being around those people, it's like you feel like you're not able to control your reactions. Like, like you're just so reactive because like those people trigger you more. So it's like, okay, you know, how do you take back that control? How do you take back that power with those people that are the most difficult to communicate with always?
Yeah.
And that's where it's like, nope, I'm going to keep the tone and the energy or the frequency, and I'm going to set that. And you know, whether it's time limits or whether it's you know, what you talk about too, or how, you know, how you talk about it. And there'll be times, you know, where I'll be like, well, you know, we don't seem to be getting anywhere on this. Like, I'm gonna, if you want to talk about something else, you know, change the subject. Or also sometimes it's, you know, put things back on them. You know, we talked about questions before, asking questions.
Yeah.
But it's just, and those are all ways you take back the power of the situation of, yeah, even if you're empath, you can still set the tone. So it's, you don't have to be so influenced by people who, you know, in, you know, me working in customer service too. Like I've worked with, you know, different people, different situations where you have, you know, a situation that's escalated. It's like, okay, you're coming into an escalated situation. How do you then reset the tone? How do you redirect? You know, it doesn't, in being an empath, yes, you feel and you've, and that could actually be a tool because then you're sometimes a better listener, because sometimes people just want to be heard or feel like they're heard, you know, validated through that. So, you know, being an empath can be a great tool, you know, with that active listening. And so then you can come in, you know, really set the tone for those things because, you know, you're redirecting where that energy is going.
Can I ask a question, Jules? Because I'm really happy you're talking about this because personally, I have no, I don't relate to any of that kind of stuff. I mean, I'm a force wherever I go. It just happens. I don't know any different either. So, um, but like I said, you know, I've spent years watching my husband just um, struggle. And I think it's amazing and beautiful that you're saying, no, 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 you have to take responsibility for being an empath and protect yourself. And you do have influence here. You don't always have to be influenced by the energies, um, which is a beautiful thing for empaths to hear. I think it takes probably everybody's a case by case basis, a long time to really develop those skills. And I just want to, you know, you talked about maybe the rocks or the crystals or and redirecting communication. How does an empath handle though? Like, let's say it is someone like, I mean, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not trying, it's not a boast. It's just who in my makeup. I'm a 6 foot tall, big woman. Every room that I walk into, I am going to change that energy. It's been like that since I was born. I can't change it. And I'm not so much of a empath that I feel everything because I'm giving all the feeling, you know, I feel my own energy. I'm more of a knower empath. Okay. So that's what drew my husband into me at the first place. You know, he's like, oh, what's that? You know. Um, but watching him have all these feelers out everywhere he goes, everything that's just soaking up everything. How does someone from your experience that's like that, the empaths that are just feelers, that I call them windows, that just everything kind of starts coming in, it can go out, but who knows if it will, you know, like that kind of thing. A lot just is coming in. Um, how do they initially kind of protect themselves when they go into an environment, or if someone like me, very strong energy, enters a space, how do the other empaths kind of hold, you know, protect their own space?
I think self-awareness,
Okay.
spending like, and I think silence also came up when you're, you know, saying that too. You know, spending time in silence and having self-awareness, you recognize, okay, recognize what your energy is.
Hmm.
If you know where you're at, then when you start feeling those other things, it's like, wait, like then you have to see you know, where that ends and where other people began too, because you have to, I mean, it's great, you know, having that sense of like, you know, feeling and you know, everyone around you, but then again, it's like, okay, but you have to say, well, but that's them.
Mm-hmm.
and 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 I got to a point also that I didn't look at things as like, oh, this is bad or this is good. It's like, okay, this is the experience. It's neither bad or good.
Oh.
And I look at it of like, okay, what am I learning through that experience? And so if you take a different perspective on it too, I think it helps you get out of that overwhelmed mindset. It puts you in more like um in control or a sense of control, because you're not, it's like you're taking that zoom back of like, okay, let's look at the big picture here of what's going on, and not like just being right in the middle of it where you just have, it's just, you
All
feel
feeling.
like it's all around.
Yeah. Okay. So I really love that you said self-awareness so you can identify what's yours opposed to what somebody else is. Because I really do feel, and feeler empaths is what I call them. They have so much emotion going on that like 70% of it's usually not even nerves. And so that self-awareness. Do you take time like in the morning or the night or before you're going in somewhere to kind of check in with yourself? To just be like, okay, where am I right now before I enter or before I start my day, to feel out your own emotions? Because to me, this is so interesting. I don't, go ahead,
I
Jules.
think, yeah, no, I think it's a daily thing of, okay, as you're planning out your day, it's like, okay, this is what I have to do. And you, it kind of, it is what it is. And I love that phrase, but, and I
Yeah,
probably use it too much sometimes, but, you know, see things for what it is and be like, okay, so I'm going to do this. And so it's like, I create like a momentum also by, you know, planning that out ahead of time of like, okay, well, where am I going to be at? What am I going to be doing? So you kind of have, kind of a game plan, a set um
yeah,
construct, I guess, of kind of like, okay, what I have to do. And part of that too is, I think, for me, sometimes of the tone, how I'm thinking about it. Like, am I thinking about it like, oh my gosh, it's so much work? Or am I like, yeah, we're gonna do this? Like, I mean, it's like
right,
having a positive mindset of like, no, I can do this. The can do, you know, than saying like, oh no, I can't. Well, no, you can't with that attitude. You're never going to be able to. It's
right,
always going to be
right.
overwhelming. I mean, it always comes back to, okay, setting your mind of like, how do I choose to perceive this?
Wow. Yeah, I've noticed that empaths, feeler empaths, that they need that moment or even a build up of like, let's say it's something big that you got to do. They need a lot of space and time to like work that out in their head and in their emotions to do exactly what you're saying, to be in kind of the right frame of mind. And I've also noticed that, let's say something happens, like, oh, schedule changed, or it's a surprise, and it's very difficult for them to kind of just all of a sudden shift gears. Probably because there is this whole process of like, okay, no, this is what we're doing, and we're gonna have a good time. It's just like my Brad will refer to it as, surprises. I don't want any surprises when it could literally just be a change in the schedule, or hey, we're gonna stop off here, or whatever it may be. If it gets him out of what he thought the day was gonna look like, because he's prepped it in his mind, it's
Right.
hard for him. And I that right now is going to be difficult for people because there is so much uncertainty. There's so much very interesting energy flows. There's very unpredictable aspects of the energy right now, that things can happen, good and bad. But how does an empath kind
Yeah.
of handle that?
Well, this is how I think I started to handle that. So
Okay.
from a very young age, I used to play scenarios in my head of like bad things that would happen. And what did I do though? I didn't just sit in that. I was like, okay, well, what would I do?
Mhm.
Because when you're in, grade school, they say, okay, if you have a fire at home, this is what you're supposed to do. So then I would like I started going through different scenarios, and it's like, I kind of kept that, like, as I got older, of like, okay, well, if the worst happens, what am I going to do? Well, now I have a plan for the worst case scenario.
First, yeah.
Statistically speaking, the worst case isn't going to happen. So it's like, if I have the plan for the worst thing, then it's like, well, everything else should be easy. Like then those changes will happen, and I'll be able to go with the flow because I'm choosing to take a different perspective on it. It's kind of like when a kid falls down, it's like, oh no,
Yeah.
and then they're like, oh, and then they start crying. But you feel like, oh, whoopsie daisy, like, and you just, make it, it's the, okay, well, how do we, it's that mindset, that perception of, oh, well, if you think this is a bad thing, well, then it's going to be a bad thing. It's how do you focus that and that's where, I have friends that have such bad anxiety, it's very
Yeah.
crippling at sometimes. So it's, trying to talk them out of that, by saying, okay, how do you then take the power back? Like, let's try to take it from a rational, instead of the irrational.
Yeah.
So it's not the emotional response, but it's more of a logical response of, okay,
Yeah.
no, let's break it down. Let's try to like ask yourself questions of like, okay, is this really what I'm feeling? Or, and that's kind of, asking yourself too, of, when you're feeling some other person's emotions, it's like, well, is this really me? Or could this be, somebody else? And, because yeah, it's and you have to keep recalibrating it too, because you do get a lot of stuff in, and that's where it's, taking time to step back. It'll be like, okay, like, am I reacting to this, or am I responding to this?
Okay. Yeah. Jules, I gotta say, when you start talking there is an actual, there's a thing that most of us, I'm gonna say a good majority of the people that listen to this program, um, we probably all do that in some way or another. Thinking of the worst catastrophe is actually a clinical term of catastrophizing, that our minds will do that because of the way we grew up, right? Like the shoe's gonna drop and the house is gonna burn down and everybody's gonna die. That's what our brains will tell us. And it does take a lot of reprogramming to change that. Um, but instead of like really changing that to like, yeah, that's not going to happen, you said, okay, if that happens, which is not, I'm going to know what to do. And that's probably not going to happen. So everything else other than that, I can handle, I can work through. And I think that's really awesome because I mean, our minds, I mean, face it, I mean, none of us are perfect. We all got some broken stuff going on up here. And you use that medical aspect of what happened to all of us and flipped it into, well, a positive mindset. Okay, I just thought of every worst thing that could possibly happen. That might not be the healthiest thing that I can do, but what the healthy thing I am going to do is I'm going to say, well, shit, everything's gonna be fine then, because none of that is actually going to happen. Yeah, that's awesome.
But you
'Cause
can't dwell on it either.
yeah,
Because the more focus you spend on that, where your focus goes, your energy goes. So then
yeah,
you can manifest those things too. So you
yeah,
cannot spend time in that, for very long. I think it's good to use sometimes, but I think overall is that sense of like, no, I can get through this. I mean, because
Yeah,
gosh,
flipping it
you
real
think of
quick.
worst case scenarios. I mean, yeah, you know, shit happens though. It's
Yeah,
like
our
shit
minds
happens
do
all the
that.
time. It's like,
Yeah,
what are you gonna do?
yeah,
Okay, you gonna
our
cry
minds
about
will
it,
do
or are you
it.
gonna do something?
Right, exactly. And it's that self-preservation, that self-protection of, okay, if the worst thing possibly happens, I got it. We can do this. And then you
Right.
can move on from there and enjoy all of what life has to offer because it's not the worst situation. I like that. I really do. Because it takes actually a lot of years of counseling and lots of shadow work to really get rid of that kind of mindset. It's on an automatic for most of us. So let's flip it into what Jules just said and think of it. Okay, I thought of the worst part. Not going to happen. But if it does, I'm ready. So now I'm going to go have a good time. Yeah, that sounds good. That sounds really good. Jules, I wanted to talk, we did want to talk briefly about active listening because I was just listening very intently, not so much for myself, but I was listening for my husband going, wow, she's got a lot of good stuff going on here that I know he's going to need. He he's learned a lot over the years and he does take care of himself very well. And I think it's easier for him because he's a male and he is just allowed to come home and go in the garage and not speak to anyone. You see what I'm saying? He has those females, most females, we got the kids, we got the this, we got the, we are the hostess of the family, we can't run and hide. He actually still runs and hides a lot. To deal with his empath self. So I was listening to all those beautiful techniques that I will share with him. Um, Listening. We talked so much about communication last time, and we only briefly talked about like the power of listening. And I do feel August, we're a little bit coming out of it now, but I think we all understood, at least the last 3 weeks, it was like,
Yeah.
I can't even say it here, Um, how important is it to actually listen in your opinion?
I think it's probably the most important thing because everybody wants to feel that validation. Everyone wants to be heard.
Yeah. And I think for me, well, I'll just speak for myself then. So I had like a few different scenarios going on that involved texts, emails, phone conversations. It did not matter what kind of communication it was. And at first glance, it was like, whoa, that's an attack at me or whatever. Or at first glance, it was like, wow, why are you so angry? Hello, ego of August, you know? And of course, my ego is like, oh, nobody speaks to me like that. That's my ego then wanting to respond that way. That is all the first glance stuff. But when I actually then read it again or really listened, it was all fear based coming off of this other person. So then I had to change my approach. I still had to be firm, but I had to change my approach. And I think because I knew we were going to talk about this. So I was like, wow, what kind of experiences have I had? I know you're going about to talk about your experiences. And it's interesting that when we really listen and we hold our ego back before it wants to respond in this big August that we're having, for me, it was actually fear coming out of everyone. Just fear, 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 fear. And then based on that, I knew how I had to respond. Like I can still be very firm, but gentle at the same time. You know what I mean? I can still be very straightforward, but gentle with my approach. Um, and that for me was, at least for right now, the power of listening, the power of stepping back for a moment and trying to take in what was really being said and done. What were your experiences this past few weeks?
I don't know about the past few weeks, but I just think the thing that people forget with listening is because people don't like silence. Sometimes like
Mhm.
conversations, silence makes people feel really awkward, but you need to allow for space. You don't have to respond right away. You
Mm,
don't have to respond with like a lot necessarily. Sometimes it's, and this is something I learned with working in memory care and working with people also too that are hard of hearing. You have to leave space
mm.
because if you know, part of being, you know, people listening is, are you allowing time to be heard?
Okay. Okay. That actually, I'm taking that in so many various different ways. I
Like with how
really
much
am.
people say and how they say it, like you can be heard a lot easier, I think, if people keep it simple. I mean, how
Mhm.
much do we love to use that phrase, you know, keep it
Yeah.
simple? Because especially, you know, it depends on, you know, males and females communicating sometimes too, because females emotion based usually, you know, they like to talk a lot. We use a lot more words sometimes, but sometimes that's not always heard well.
Right.
So it's like, okay, know your audience. I think that's, you know, kind of one of the basic things of speaking is know your audience also.
So oh man. Okay. So Jules, we have now gone from the beginning of this show to boundaries to now give people space. So there is a middle ground in there that I think setting up boundaries, but then also having discernment, not judgment, having discernment about how much space that person needs. Cause like I'm hearing a lot of like, yeah, don't cut people off when they're talking. But if it is somebody that's just the same thing, there needs to be boundaries there, right? I'm hearing a bunch of different versions as to giving that space and with that silence. I'm hearing let people finish what they're trying to say because so many people do communicate vastly different. It might take them a vast time to get to the point, even though we should try to keep it simple.
But they're working out sometimes.
Yeah,
Like when women do this all the time, it's
yeah,
the speaking is that their way of working it out, what they're really trying to say. So eventually they'll get to what they want to say, but they're in the process, they're happen to be, you
yeah.
know,
Which is
verbally
me,
trying to
which
work it
is
out.
completely me. I mean, there's definitely introvert in me. I don't show any of you that lady. She's all for me. But most of me is extrovert. And so I literally can't sort shit out for the most part unless I'm verbally communicating it to someone. That's what an extrovert really is that if I got a problem, I have to babble to someone for at least a good chunk of time for me to even understand what I need to do or what how to resolve. It's what
Mhm.
extroverts do. It's how we operate. So I appreciate you saying that because a lot of people think extroverts just want to or just show and want to be in front of the camera like this or they're the life of the party. No, it's literally we don't know how to process unless we're verbally communicating it. It's a wild thing for us. So thank you. I like people that will give me space to figure out my life. Um, but at the
But
same
then
time,
also
go ahead.
space, like there's a couple different ways to give space, like it you know, like physical, but then also pauses, like pauses
Mhm.
when you're talking,
I
and
agree.
then you go on.
Yes. Because I've noticed, and it's only been in the past few years, um, the pauses that are needed have seemed to grown for me in a way, because it is people trying to catch what their thoughts are. And I will think that they have stopped communicating, but they haven't gotten all of it out yet. They're just still looking for the words. So I've had to develop, I guess, kind of saying, in different ways, depending on the case by case. But let's say we were talking and you're going over all this stuff and there's a pause. I normally would have jumped right in and started communicating back at that moment. I have now waited some time, a bit, and then I've asked, depending on if it's business or friend or whatever, you know, did you get it all out, or this is what I think? Are you still expressing yourself? Like before I actually continue, because I've noticed that that has grown much more over the years, people having to find more space to articulate themselves, is what I'm hearing from you. And I believe that's true. See, like right now, that pause, I would have been done. And you were giving me the space to finish. See, that's how that goes.
Well, and it goes back to the listening to respond, or listening because you're like actually hearing what's being said.
Okay, so let's talk about that for a minute.
Which I think a lot of people get into.
Yeah. Let's talk about the general population with that, because I want to say in the spiritual community, that's actually a very big struggle for people. Very big struggle, especially if they have
And
any psychic abilities.
you're right,
Very,
right.
very big
Intuitive
struggle.
kicks in.
Yeah, because it's like you'll be listening to somebody and they're going on, and you know exactly what's happening, and it's like very big struggle. You have to pull back and become professional. Um, so let's talk about the general population for a moment. Listening with the intent to respond or listen, like, that's an issue. People that are just listening to respond instead of listening to, like, take in what's really being said. I don't know what that's all about. I don't know why it's an issue, because I don't think I've ever not listened to somebody wanting to hear what they had to say.
I think what helped me get through that was when I went to school for nursing. We spent a lot of time on communication, and no matter how much you think you know what someone's going through, you are not that person. And we're always very cautious to not use phrases like, I know what you're going through.
Mm,
Like that's, I think, because
mm,
we don't know. We are not that person. No matter how much we think we know, we still are not that person. How much we can sympathize and empathize and have gone through maybe the same thing, but still we are not that person. So I think, phrases like that, yeah, we think, oh, it's just like, a throwaway phrase, like it does. But I think it's those little things of like, no, be like, and even sometimes even saying like, well, I can understand maybe, what you're going through a little bit. But it's like, you can never really know. And so that's where I think sometimes like, yeah, we want to like jump to the end of like, oh yeah, we got this. Like we the intuition or the, because we have that connection. It's like, you want to like finish their sentence for them.
yeah.
And not that we're trying to be rude or anything, but we're just, because we're just, I think, overly excited sometimes of like, oh yeah, because we're just so tuned in of like
Yeah.
we want to just jump into, because we're like, oh yeah, because we're on the same page. But it's like, but that's not helping that other person. They just feel like then they don't get time to express themselves, and then it's they don't necessarily feel like they're really being heard. I think with if somebody's not leaving the space or not taking the time, like you were saying too, of like, okay, so what I'm hearing is, a lot of times it's, or not even that, you have to say, okay, well, what I'm hearing you say is, but a good listening skill, one of the basic things is, repeating back what they said to you.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
just so that they know you're listening.
That's literally the if I had a tool in my toolbox in this topic, it would be that. It'd be listening to people and then and then repeating back to them, because I do understand. Well, I'm human, I might miss something, but also that no one's stories are exactly similar. We think they are because of experiences and feelings, but it's not. And for me, I will say it took years, and I still do it here and there. I'm not saying I'm perfect. But it drives me crazy when I see it in other people. Probably because I do then. It's like, oh, that mirror, Courtney, you still got that issue? Um, those who, before you can even finish what you're saying, automatically start giving you advice. And they could be way over in left field because why I haven't even finished what I'm saying. Or automatically give advice. There are those that have, the gift of exhortation, or, the gift of counseling, the gift of this and that. And I guess this kind of moves into the spiritual community in a way. Like there's a whole lot of psychics out there that I don't believe have realized the damage that can happen if you feel like you should just tell somebody what you're seeing, or give them the advice as to how to fix it because you're receiving it psychically. Um, that to me, I'm very passionate about that.
That actually, brought a phrase to mind, how people say, oh, I just tell it like it is.
Mm.
According to who?
To who? Right.
Like like it is. I mean, truth is relative. It's a matter of perception and perspective. Like, tell it like it is. It's like, that's like, I think that's one of the worst justifications for saying whatever someone's about to say. Let me just keep it real with you. Well, real, like,
well, yeah,
I mean,
and I
what
think
does that mean?
I think they're trying to say this is my reality and I'm going to tell you what
Right,
it is. Yeah.
right.
The problem is that, it's there's so many interesting aspects to communication, and the giving the advice, the only reason I thought about it is because that idea of, oh, I know what, yeah, I get it. I know what you're going through. Been there, done that. You know, this is what just do this, or just do that, or just do this. I don't think we as individuals really understand how damaging that is. I don't. Like how you said, it can make other people feel like they're not being heard. I've actually seen vast, drastic things happen out of me being irresponsible with advice, let's say, um, because especially in the spiritual community, in my 20s, I've learned a lot since over, a long time. But when you're a kid or you're just new, figuring things out and learning, you still got a lot of learning to do. We don't just fill our mouths, you know what I'm saying? Um, and I think that causes so much more hurt. I had somebody a few weeks ago. I actually was very upset, very this and that. And I started expressing myself, and I couldn't even finish expressing myself before they started giving me advice. And it was nowhere on key of where I was about to head if I got to finish expressing myself. And I told them, no, that's not it. You don't know what you're talking about. And this is what's really going on, because I don't really play. But that's the thing, is they automatically felt, I'm going to fix this. I'm going to give advice, when really as you keep saying, Jules, we got to let people just express themselves because it's their journey.
Right.
Shit, we might not know. And all of the people that think they have abilities, I can guarantee you, you've been wrong many a times. I can guarantee you. So you see what I mean? We need to let people have their journeys. I think
Well,
so.
and as much advice as we want to give, I mean, what is that? Like, who really takes advice? Like, we never take our own advice, that's for sure. But to me, it's like, well, you're going to find the answers if you seek after them. You know, if you're not actively looking for the solution or the answers, like, it doesn't matter how much advice you get.
Yeah, excellent. Excellent. Yeah, there might be, we just need to vent. This is like an extrovert, like myself. I might literally just need to talk a lot so I can get my own conclusion. I don't need you to give advice because your advice literally won't mean anything to me. And same with what you just said, Jules. Man, yes, we nailed it. Hey, we nailed it because none of us listen to anyone anyways, do we? We just do our own free will of like, I'll figure it out. And if not, shit, I'll live in pain. Like that's what we do as people.
That's where strategic questions are probably the most effective way to communicate with people, because then they get to that conclusion on their own. It's like you can, lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. But you could it also reminds me of, I was watching the movie My Big Fat Greek Wedding.
Yeah.
And, she says, like, the man is the head, but the woman, she's the neck, and she turns the head. So it's like, by creating like questions, it's like you redirect. So it's like you're helping lead somebody there, but they're doing the work. Because if they're not doing the work of it, however much you want to say to them, it's not going, if they're not ready to hear it or receive it, it's not going to matter what you say.
Yeah, it's wasted air. Yeah, I fully agree. And also, I mean, I think that's a feeling moment. Like we can feel out because oftentimes people do just need to release. They just need to cry. They just need to scream and yell. They just need to cuss a lot, whatever it may be. Um, we don't always have to fix, but there's a lot of fixers. And the problem is a lot of oftentimes fixers are not listeners. That's how, I guess that's the point I'm trying to make, is that if you are a fixer and you know it, there needs to be boundaries and there needs to be more development with the listening aspect. You see what I'm saying? Yeah.
But then you also have to choose, who are you talking to? Like, as a woman, like, am I going to go talk to a man to like try to talk it out? No, because they tend to not want to do that. They want to like see it. They're fixers. They're like, okay, I'll just break it down and fix it. Like, okay, let's find a solution.
Yeah.
So it's, choosing, and I think women kind of get really upset, with husbands. Sometimes it's like, well, he's not listening to me. It's like, okay, I think you can have your girlfriends to listen to you, whatever. Like, it doesn't always have to be, your husband doesn't have to be like the person you like talk it out with. Like, that's why we have friends. So, I mean, it's like, well, what kind of expectations are you putting on what relationships?
Oh, excellent. Thank you. You actually made me think of a book that I read it about twice. Um, and I can't remember her name. It's Dr. Barbara something. I should have that book somewhere. And it's one of her first books. She actually writes all about communication. And one of her first books was you just don't understand. And she broke down this doctor, like the programming of women, the programming of men, why we have these issues with communicating and stuff like that. Like women, you've been programmed this way to talk this way. Men have been really programmed this way. She was talking about being programmed way before other people. Let's say that. Dr. Barbara, I think it started with an S. You Just Don't Understand is the title of the book. It's a great book. And so we can't really change that. And it's also a bit of like DNA and going back to tribal and hunter-gatherer stuff. And that's where fights tend to line up. But I also want to say within like the women community, you got to also identify the right friends.
Yeah.
So like I am not going to be your girlfriend that will probably sit and listen to you cry and sob. I'm just not that friend. I'm sure there's another friend in the pack that does that. I'm also not the girlfriend that co-signs your bullshit. I'm not that girlfriend either. I'm going to tell you straight up. Don't do that. Rethink that move. So you got to also feel out your girlfriends because, I'll get a call from one of my friends that she really does need to just have that sob sadness released. And I'm all like, either you shit or get off the pot, blah, 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 because I'm not that girl. You should have called the other girlfriend. What are you doing? You called the wrong one. So know that too, ladies. It's not just, do you agree with that, Jules? That
Yeah.
we all of us ladies kind of have our, especially if you're in a pack of like 3, 4, 5, everybody kind of has their role as to, oh, I go to this one for that. I go to that one for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So are you the one that everybody comes to cry to?
Yeah, I tend to be everyone's therapist, but I kind of make myself that too a little bit. But
Right.
so, I mean, but I also need to take breaks from that because it can be draining, the energy exchange. Like I'm always more mindful now, I think more than ever, of like, is this like an even energy exchange?
Mm-hmm.
And that to me kind of covers like the whole empath thing too a little bit, because it's like whether it's communication or whether it's just relationship wise, just in general, it's like, okay, is there an even energy exchange? And if there's not, it's like, okay, how do I then either put those boundaries up or limit that to make it more of a balanced relationship?
Jules, I'm happy you said that because I do think that let's talk about that for a minute, and we're gonna end on this break here. Because I do feel moving forward in whatever time shift timelines we're headed into, I think that is where a lot of people are gonna maybe be when this airs and going forward. How you're talking about how the energy exchanged. Is this balanced? Is this fair? How do we identify, is it balanced? Is it fair? And if it's not, how do you think we should handle that moving forward?
I think the best way is when you take the time to be aware of how you are before you go into talking to somebody. How do you feel before you talk to somebody versus how you feel after you talk to somebody? If you
Oh,
feel, drained or upset or triggered, like, is that, then you have to think, okay, well then that person is, it's you, that you get into a certain energy with it. So it's like, I use the narcissist as like, because I think everybody deals with a narcissist
somewhere along the line, yeah.
somewhere, right?
Yeah.
Very energy draining.
Hmm.
So, when I talk to my family members who are narcissistic, it's like I just feel like it's so hard to get something done after. It's so hard
Yeah.
to like shake that. So it's like I know that the energy is definitely going one way because they just drain it all out, those energy vampires.
I,
So, and that's where it's like, okay, well then, I try to limit or stay away from that.
yeah, I guess that is usually so draining. Draining is definitely an identifying marker. I will tell you for me, it's if I'm pissed when I get off the phone with you or if I'm done talking with you, because I don't usually feel drained. There are people that drain me, trust me. Ooh, that's wild when that happens. Um, but mine is not usually feeling drained. It's I am pissed. I am not a happy camper. Um, and then I also think sad. So it's like if it's one of those kind of like if you are drained, upset, like you
Negative.
said, triggered or even sad, that's got to be an indication. Yes, you're right that
The
this
low
is
vibration.
not. Yeah, this is low vibration with that doesn't mix with yours, and or is definitely not reciprocal. It's definitely not a fair exchange of energy. Um, well, Jules, what do we do about it?
Because I like to consider myself a pretty like high vibrational or positive, however you
Yeah,
want to express that. But and yeah, if people put me in a bad mood, it's like, well, if I always seem to be in a bad mood around somebody, it's like, well, then maybe I don't want to be around them. And which is funny because I think just yesterday I posted a meme, surround yourself with people that inspire you, not annoy you. It's like, you know, who do you want to, you are who you hang out with. So if somebody
yes,
is constantly like being negative, it's like, well, then are you negative or are they negative? It's like, you have to look at, are you the person that's bringing that energy or are they? So
yeah.
that do you have to correct it or do you have to just maybe surround yourself with other people?
I always loved the saying. Well, I guess I kind of tweaked the saying, but it was always a matter of think about what you can bring to the party, not what you can take away from it. Like,
Right.
what are you? I do have to say, Jules, I do think that is kind of where a lot of people's headspaces are. We're stepping into like kind of a reflective time for just not long until we got to kick it up again, but during the next few days, it's going to be more of a reflective time, inner reflection, and also relationship reflections. And I think a lot of us are going to have to be going, okay, I don't have to cut them out completely, but I'm not going to be talking to them every Tuesday at 12 or whatever it is. Or I got to step back from this or step back from that because it might not it's just not aligned with where your frequency, where your energy, where you are headed. And I guess what I'm trying to convey is that we've been talking about give ourselves permission nonstop for all sorts of stuff and acceptance for all sorts of stuff and forgiveness for all sorts of stuff. Even forgive them for they know not what they do. Forgive ourselves for we know not what we do. Um, I think going forward, we're all going to be tweaking relationships. Like, oh, I don't know about this one. Like, I don't have to cut you out completely because that's not who I am. But our energies just are not jiving. We're not grooving together anymore. I'm gonna go over here, as you said with your meme, be with those who inspire you, opposed to those who annoy you. And that's a whole lot of what the last 3 weeks were about. Just so everybody knows, I haven't even done my energy update yet. Well, actually, it will before this airs. So that is, I think, what we're headed into. And I think using all of this stuff that Jules has presented today, especially with the empath stuff, because I'm never going to be able to talk about it. It's not I don't know. It's not my reality. So how am I supposed to talk about it? So I appreciate you, Jules, for talking about the struggle and the qualities and the also the all that the empath can do for themselves to take that power back.
And
Um,
it's not just empaths. It's
oh
not
yeah,
just empaths in the sense that, what kind of energy do you want to be sitting in? Like what kind, where do you want your energy? And that's where I think time, alone or silence or just being self-aware is important. But you don't have to be an empath to still be influenced by other energies around you, whether
right.
it's television or groups or because you get into that group think, you get into that You know,
Oh,
how many times we watch a movie and that elicits certain emotions out of us too. It's like the other things, you don't have to be an empath to be, you respond, you know, or to
yeah,
be
it's
influenced.
all people. Yeah. Yeah, it's all people. And Jules, I really do thank you because I do think that you've presented a lot of tools to all people um, to help them with some possibly some bigger decisions that they might have to make going forward. As far as, yeah, it's not, who you keep and who you throw away. That's not what we're saying. I think it's more how to establish the boundaries for your energy, to protect your energy, to move forward in your love and light. Because I know that's what you want, Jules. That's what I want. That's what I would hope a lot of people would want. Um, how would you handle? I'm gonna kind of end a little bit with this question. How would you handle, Jules? You've made the decision, like I do have to separate from this person bit. Like I might not be able to separate entirely. They are family, or you're not a bad human being. I just can't hang out with you that much, that kind of thing. I got to do you in small doses, you know. If you've come to that understanding, that conclusion within yourself that that's what's healthy for you, how do you then carry that out?
I mean, other than limiting like time and you know, putting, you know, healthy boundaries like with those people, I think self-care, it comes to how are you resetting yourself? What are you doing for yourself? Um, because a lot of times you don't have a choice. You have to deal with some of these people, like
Yeah,
especially when they're family.
yeah, yeah,
Because sometimes family is the most difficult. And
yeah,
I feel like that's where I hear most people um, say they have such a hard time communicating to, is because they're on such a different page mentally, because you have so much of that programming. Like you have to just take a position of compassion of, you know, of where they're at, of where someone's at, and not take it personally, and put it back on them of saying, oh well, that's where they're at, and that's okay, it is what it is. But their reality doesn't have to be my reality.
right. Jules, I love that. I especially don't take it personally. Whew. I think it was like, I don't know, 2000, whatever it was, over a decade ago, that I was like every day, over and over again, don't take it personally. Don't I would tell myself that. Don't take it personally. Absolutely none of this that's happening is about you, Cortney. That was me, the first rung of me trying to work on my ego. Like none of this has to do with anything to do with you, Cortney. Hi. So don't take it personally. I was thinking this past weekend, a lot of people have issues with like people pleasing. And for me, it's interesting because yeah, I had issues. I had issues with people pleasing, but mine were a bit different. Mine was, I want to give you a good time. I want to take care of all your needs. I want to, you know, I still have a little bit of that. Too much of a caretaker, but it comes in waves, not every day anymore. And but I never had a problem with telling people no. A lot of people that are people pleasers, that's like really what they need to work on. It's just telling someone no. Um, and I guess how I would want to kind of say goodbye to everybody is, if you need permission, I'm giving you permission right now. I would love for you to have permission from yourself, but if you need somebody to give you permission, I give you full permission to start using the word no. It is, it changes your life, and I've never had a problem with it, but man, I've seen what it's done in other people's lives. Just the most simplest word, no. You can use it. Jules, what would be your last little sound off of?
I'm so glad. I'm so glad you said that, because so often, you know, people argue and like try to change your mind, Remember, you don't, with explanation, trying to give an explanation, trying to like, no is a complete sentence. You don't need anything else.
No is no.
Say
Yeah.
no and walk away, because if you keep going or they keep trying to gauge you in conversation, they're
Yeah.
trying to energy and trying to manipulate you and trying to like, no.
No.
And that's it. That's all you need. That's all you need.
I will say, ladies and gentlemen, whomever that's listening, when you start really practicing that, you will see the vast changes in your life, and you will see the stunned faces. And no matter when you do it, what group you're in, what's happening around you, and Jules is right, they will try to manipulate as if like you're gonna keep going past, like you're gonna change the
The
no.
boundary.
Yeah, you're gonna change the no.
They're gonna test the
Yeah,
boundary.
they're gonna test it. Oh, to the point that it shocks people how good I am at saying no.
But that's where, people test boundaries. And so when you try to have those boundaries, sometimes it takes a little bit work.
Yes.
It's going to take a little time. Like you got to allow for
Yes.
people to get used to it, especially if you're not one who has a lot of boundaries.
Yes, exactly. So that's, I think that's a great place to kind of sound off, Miss Jules. Is, gosh, we covered a lot of ground here. This was really good. Thank you, sister. Thank you. Any one last, and I've said that like now 3 times. See, Jules and I just keep talking. One last sound off, goodbye, little love note.
It's self-care. I think it all goes back to self-care.
Yeah.
And it's so foundational. Like, it's not selfish. It's not ego. It's what you need to do.
Oh, I love that, guys. Well, everyone, I love you all. Keep shining, and yes, get those boundaries. Learn how to listen and learn how to say the word no. It'll change your life. I can guarantee it. Thank you, Miss Jules. It's been a lovely evening with you.
Thanks for having me.